Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. I actually just finished filming a video unboxing a seed order that I made, and over the course of making that video, the car got colder and colder and colder, and the sun has kind of shifted, and so I'm going to go out and go for my walk and make a few phone calls that I really need to make. But first, as I'm sitting here huddled in my coat, freezing in this car, I wanted to just talk for a couple of minutes. I don't know if this is the first video in a series or if it's just kind of like a stream of consciousness. If you follow my Facebook page, and if you are a friend of mine in real life who happens to be unfortunate enough to be burdened with my crazy ideas, you will know that I am really, really interested in eco-village living. I have been interested in intentional community since my early 20s. When we were first married and I was 22 and we lived in St. Louis, my spouse and I actually looked at what it would take to join an eco-village in St. Louis. And we were young and my husband was in grad school and we could not afford it. The buy-in was pretty spendy, but I loved looking at what co-housing is. So I loved the idea of that kind of community. And I felt like someday that would be something that I can step into, that our family could step into. Now, if you aren't familiar with co-housing or eco-villages, co-housing is a system where you kind of reject the isolated American notion of individual houses and we all kind of mind our own business, and we have resources that we don't utilize very often, but we still own them in isolation as just our household. So co-housing model values community interdependence, human relationships, honing communication skills and human bonds, and also sharing resources. And by sharing resources that benefit from an economy of scale, or resources that are expensive and seldom used by individuals, you foster greater community because you caretake for those things in common and you share them, and you often use them in a community setting with the help of your neighbors. So for me, I've always had this dream of having a situation where we had a smaller home set amongst a little neighborhood or village of other small homes that had all of the normal amenities that any home would have, but some of those larger elements like laundry or a large communal kitchen and dining area, guest bed accommodations like a guest house, a community center with perhaps a library or a seed library or a large craft room. Those were all shared in common. And so that you are not isolated in your own space, and you're also sharing those spaces that are expensive. And with things like craft equipment or woodworking equipment or construction equipment, garden equipment that you don't need every day. And it's more responsible to share them with neighbors, to share them with folks so that they get to live a full life as tools being utilized, as rooms and spaces being utilized. And it also promotes those friendships and connections, maybe not even friendships, but just those neighborly connections where you live in close contact with other folks and you are meeting folks at the community laundry, or you are sharing meals multiple times a week where perhaps you sign up once a week to cook dinner for everybody in your co-housing community of 10 or 20 or 30 households. So I've loved the co-housing model. I would love to talk about it a lot more later in detail, but suffice it to say, I've been enamored with the co-housing model. And then you add a layer to that, which is the eco-village model. Now, a lot of co-housing communities are maybe for retirement communities or for folks with disabilities or folks who just want to focus on interpersonal relationships and live a life that is not isolated, where you share resources with other people for the purpose of building relationships with other people. So Ecovillage adds another layer on that, where the construction is perhaps a green construction, either certified under the multiple kinds of certification you can get, using reclaimed materials, green building materials, focusing on alternative energy, focusing on gray water recycling, rainwater capture, perhaps composting toilets, definitely kitchen composting, perhaps having poultry, perhaps having other livestock, having communal garden spaces, and maybe having a working farm as well. So eco-villages add a whole other layer of like permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and sustainable living on top of the sustainable community model. So for me, that's always been such a huge appeal to think about. I mean, obviously, if you watch this channel, I talk about social permaculture, like earth care and people care and fair share are so important to me. And when you get an eco-village co-housing model, in the ideal, you get all three of those together. You get healing our relationships with other people, and in turn doing the work of healing our own relationship with ourselves and learning good communication and learning how to process our trauma. But you also get healing our relationship with the planet and practicing living out an experiment in which you are trying to have a smaller footprint. So we are learning to practice harm reduction in the way we relate to other people, and harm reduction in the way in which a community of people inhabits a space on planet Earth. Obviously, as an idealistic person who practices permaculture, all of that, it just feels like so great, and I wish I could access it. So many years ago, we looked into a place that was for sale in a co-housing community in Portland after we moved here. And we were at a point in our lives where we had not yet bought our land trust home, but we were contemplating moving back to Missouri because we just couldn't afford the rent here. We were just hemorrhaging money on rent and at the time medical debt for one of our kids. And so we looked at what it would take. We felt really isolated. We felt really lonely. We felt that Portland was not sustainable. And so we looked at like what it would take to buy into the co-housing community. And at the time, it was way outside our budget. In fact, it was probably close to, if I do the math in my head, it was more than twice our mortgage ended up being to buy into this co-housing community in Northeast Portland, which is one of the things I've encountered researching co-housing again lately and eco-villages again lately, is that they are by and large for the affluent. They are for folks with deep pocketbooks who can afford to invest in a community. So this is just kind of, with pandemic living, with the loss of my roller derby community, with my kids getting older and wondering if and when my kids are going to live independently. My video I did a while back on permaculture and aging and disability, thinking about like the food that comes out of my yard once my kids are up and gone is going to be far more than our family can eat. And also the maintenance and care of my property is going to be more than I want to undertake. And it just feels like shared resources and shared labor is such a good model. And a lot of elderly people are really lonely, and it also provides community. A lot of young families are really lonely. The loneliest I've ever been is when I was a mother with an infant and a 2-year-old. That was the most lonely period in my life, where I was the most isolated. I've been really digging into co-housing again lately and thinking, Angela, what would it take to actually found another co-housing community in Portland? So there are a number of co-housing communities, and I will list them all down in the description, that I am aware of in Portland. Now, there are smaller co-housing models that are not going to be on this list, where it is one household with a number of individuals who choose to live in community within the confines of one household. I'm talking more about an intentional community with multiple separate living structures, and then shared garden, shared kitchen, shared laundry, an intentional planned community, a village, if you would. So there are 2 eco-villages in Portland. One is Kailash, which runs on a rental model, so not ideal for what I'm looking for. And the other one is Columbia Ecovillage, which has no units for sale and is probably outside of my budget. So I've been looking what would it take to found a new eco-village in Portland? If both of the 2 eco-villages in Portland are full, that clearly, and with wait lists, that clearly says to me there's a need for this kind of living. So I have been just going down every rabbit hole. I have reread every book there is that I have previously read and checked out everything from the library on eco-villages and co-housing. I have read reams of material on the legal structures, on the bylaws, on community governance, on zoning, on permitting, on working with local governments to form co-housing eco-villages, get around some of the regulations about gray water, what it would take to fundraise and fund. I've been looking at properties. I posted on my Facebook page this gorgeous farm that would basically be perfect in not that far outside of Portland. It's a little bit far. $3 million. And that would not include the construction of then the individual units in a community kitchen, community laundry, things like that. So yeah, I'm feeling a little bit disheartened after looking at the cost of property and speaking with folks who have gone through the arduous many-year, like 5 to 8 years, sometimes 9 or 10 year long process in starting an eco-village, and how you make sure that it doesn't go belly up. A lot of them go belly up before they ever get going. If you're following my Facebook page or perhaps my Instagram, just know that's the headspace that I'm in right now. Like, I really would love to figure out what it would look like, what it would take to create an eco-village, do the funding and make it sustainable and not just available for folks who can afford $500,000 buy-in, or some of these are like $700,000 or $800,000 to buy into a co-housing eco-village in the Pacific Northwest, because land and construction is so expensive here, and zoning laws and permitting processes and renters' rights and homeowners' rights laws are really an added layer of complexity to thinking about doing co-housing here versus doing it perhaps in the Midwest or in the South. So if you have thoughts or experiences, I encourage folks to email me if you're interested in the thought of helping found a co-housing eco-village community within commuting distance to Portland, Oregon. That's something you might be interested in. It's a lot of work. Or you are interested in any level on supporting or wanting to share your experience in co-housing and eco-villages, please shoot me an email at parkrospermaculture@gmail.com. I've gotten over 50 emails so far, and a huge range of experiences and great conversations have come out of that group of emails. It feels like an enormous undertaking that one person cannot do alone. And I don't know whether it's even feasible. Maybe it's just a dream that will never come to fruition. Yet another thing that I just long for and never really get there. But I feel that I'm at a point in my life where I really want to explore it, where I need to do some more investigation instead of just daydreaming. So if you are interested in eco-villages, if you're interested in co-housing, if you're interested in living in Portland, Oregon, or in the surrounding area, if you have experience with fundraising, nonprofits, land trusts, forming an eco-village, living in one, working on a co-housing condominium model, any of that kind of stuff, and you want to share your experience with me, or you want to get on board and join me, please reach out to me at parkrospermaculture@gmail.com. I'd love to talk with you. If you want to share your horror stories and cautionary tales, I would also love to hear those as well. So I probably will be doing a number of other videos coming up about eco-villages and co-housing as I learn more, because I know it's a topic that lots of folks are interested in. And for me, especially the legal aspect and the community relational governance aspect, that's all been really interesting. And I have just read a ridiculous amount of material in the last couple of weeks, especially like late at night when I'm not sure what else to do and I have insomnia. I'm just going to focus on that positive eco-village dream and wade through legalese about it. So if you are interested in chatting about it, or you are interested in maybe you might want to live with me and my family and grow food and experiment with sustainable living, experiment with healing the planet and healing our relationships with other people, and that's something you seriously want to consider, I want to hear from you. So, okay, I am going to go check on my kids. I can see them running around the playground, but I'm just going to go touch base with them, and maybe I'll hear from you. Thanks.